Okay, so today we're doing a webinar on cover letters, and then we're also going to be reviewing webinar or cover letters that you have sent over to review. If you haven't sent them over yet, you can. There should be an announcement. As I said, today's program is about cover letters and the do's and don'ts of them and how to prepare good cover letters. Most people, when you prepare a cover letter for any job, you are essentially trying out, and people do review cover letters. Most of the time, people are not going to spend a lot of time in your cover letter. So your cover letter actually can either do a lot of harm, which most cover letters can do, or they can help you. And a good cover letter, which I'll go through when I show you guys cover letters today, can actually be very beneficial, and it can get you a position by showing how well you write, your ability to catch people's attention, and all sorts of things that are very important. And your resume, we reviewed resumes last week. If you haven't seen that, we should be putting that up shortly, the resume review webinar. But the resume is obviously the most important part of everything, but the cover letter as well can really hurt you. One typo in a cover letter can often prevent you from getting hired at firms. A cover letter that goes into too much detail or highlights your weaknesses can do a lot of harm. And then a cover letter that seems a little bit too over the top in terms of your opinion of yourself can often do a lot of harm as well. I was thinking about cover letters specifically last night, and I don't know what got me thinking of them, but one of the things that people do that are very successful is they're able to uh, basically highlight what they can do for you, and they don't really talk too much about themselves. If someone's selling, an example would be selling vitamins. Tim Ferriss, who's pretty, well known for writing the 4 Hour Workweek and all those sorts of books, or that book specifically, actually got his start by selling vitamins, and he sold, I don't know, some sort of brain vitamin, and that was his first business, and that's what he based everything on. And it's interesting to look at the type of copywriting he did there. And essentially, what he was doing when he was trying to sell this brain vitamin was just talking about how this vitamin can do all this stuff for you. It didn't really talk about what was in it. It just talked about how it would make you a better person and so forth. And it's the same thing with a cover letter. Like, your cover letter really doesn't need to go into a lot of detail about you. It really needs to talk more about, what you can do for other people, and to think about that. Because if you say something in your cover letter, like, I was the highest biller in my firm, or I did this and that, that looks like it makes you a very good employer, and a very good employee for an employer, that can help you a lot and will make a huge difference. And in many cases, it's the only tool you have to separate yourself from a lot of applicants out there besides your resume. And so there's really no formula to follow. One thing I do recommend that everyone do is, very successful organizations, whether it's a Groupon or different types of things, often become very powerful based on the strength of their copywriting, able to write very short, catchy things that get people's attention. If you're like a BCG candidate or you've used any of our services, you've probably uh, receive things from us that are very short and try to get your attention. And a cover letter is basically the same thing. When people are writing emails, for example, whether it's an application email or anything, the whole purpose of the email is to get people to click on a link. And the whole purpose of your cover letter is to get people to bring you in for an interview. In order to do that, you'd have to follow a lot of the same rules that people try to follow with emails, which are, you don't want to be too long because most people don't have a lot of time. You want to highlight the important points first, and then you want to try to establish a lot of credibility. So I'm going to just give a quick presentation today about cover letters, and then I will review all the cover letters that have been sent. Let me just put in an email address here to everyone where you can, I think it's Jenkins. That he's actually the guy that helps me with these webinars is out today, but I'm going to put in his email address so you can send things to his account, or you can also send that to that account, and then we should be able to get those during the webinar so we can review your resume. So the first thing I'm going to do is just talk a few things about 5 things you should do and 5 things you shouldn't do in a cover letter. And then we'll take a quick break and then come back, and anybody that sends their cover letter, we'll review. So the first thing is just to remember, the people that are reading your cover letter tend to be very busy. And Most employers, when they're hiring and reading cover letters, and you have to put yourself in the shoes of an employer or anybody you've ever hired, really they're not, they have a lot of work pending. So they have cases that they have matters that need to be, dealt with. And their objective really is to bring in the best person as quickly as possible. And so just imagine you were hiring someone to to take care of your children or to do yard work or to paint your kitchen or something along those lines. You're not going to spend a lot of time reading their materials if you have an urgent need. So if you have an urgent need for a babysitter, you're probably not going to spend a lot of time reading cover letters and profiles. You're probably going to see if the person has the right experience and then bring them in. If there's something that sticks out to them, but then you bring them in. But you have to get people's attention quickly. And your objective really is to stick out and to look as good as you possibly can with as few words many times as you possibly can. The best cover letters I've ever done and gotten the best response from, one cover letter I wrote when I was it may have just been the time of the market when I was personally applying for jobs, but it said something like, I'm interested in practicing law at the highest level. Your firm is exactly what I'm seeking. And then that was it. And then I signed my name. And that got a great response compared to any other letter I'd ever done. One time I used to get letters of recommendation, as I'm sure everyone on this call has gotten. And the best letter recommendation ever got was from a very famous torts professor, and he's no longer alive, but sometimes people would write letters of recommendation that were several pages long. But the best one I ever had was from a very well-known, his name was Jeffrey O'Connell. And he wrote something along the lines of, I've been an attorney and law professor for over 50 years. And if I was you, I would definitely hire him. And that was it. And that got me a lot of interviews for clerkships and other things, and much more than competing letters that I got beforehand. So sometimes the shortest and most direct letters make the best points, and that's just something to understand. If you wrote a letter to a law firm saying, "I've always wanted to work in this law firm since I first learned about what you do in law school. I'd love to interview with you," or something along those lines, that can make a lot more difference than a 2 or 3 paragraph letter that talks about things that you think are important that you've done and so forth. But the main thing that you need to also realize that everyone is really looking for, and this isn't necessarily related to cover letters, it's related to, everything is so impersonal these days. So, and it's always been impersonal to some extent, but the world is getting more and more impersonal. And as the world gets more impersonal, what happens is people are looking for connection. So everywhere you go, people looking for connection. They're trying to be seen, they're trying to make friends, they're trying to be loved, they're trying to have people say good things about them. And but the people generally want some sort of connection. And as that connection goes away, people tend to get depressed and not feel so good. The connection is very important. So thinking about your cover letters, you want people to see you as someone maybe that feels a connection to the employer or that they can connect with it. It's a very subtle point, but the people that are the best attorneys and the best at getting business and the best at everything really are able to make that connection. And they do it in a million different ways. But the cover letter, of course, is one way you can do it is by making a very quick connection. You can certainly write, and a lot of this advice here is just kind of standard cover letter advice. And you can summarize the work that you've done and so forth if you're a junior associate with primary responsibility. And you can do all this stuff in terms of what your cover letter is and what I'm talking about here, which is to talk about yourself and to talk about some of the things that you believe are your strongest assets and skills. But ultimately, just remember that your ability to make a connection with the employer is really going to make a huge difference. And if you can connect with the person you're writing to or anybody, you can do that. So there's ways of doing that. If you've overcome significant obstacles, some people may like to hear about that, working through law school or received a scholarship to a certain law school. People are happy to read about that. And that can also separate you. But you have to, be able to talk about things that the employer, that can, in a way that can make a connection most times. The way to make a connection is not many times to be very general in terms of your experience. So saying I've done this and this and this and this isn't something that's going to make a connection. Saying I love that your firm worked on this matter. I'm interested in this too, and I did get some experience there, and it made me want to do this type of work. Or I love that these attorneys are here, or I love that I've really felt connected to the people I've met there. All those things make a huge difference. Connecting with people and bringing yourself into the realm of connection as opposed to the realm of just being a number and so forth is what gets people jobs. It's what makes the world work is the connections. Just talking about blanket things really directly doesn't always work. Letters that are targeted and focused towards the employer make a huge difference. And even if you're sending it, if you're in a certain practice group, connecting with that person, doing something, telling them that they're a graduate of your law school, that they've done this, that you have this in common and so forth. And I can tell you so many different stories. I had so many connection letters that have made a huge difference by highlighting directly why the person is interested in each employer. So at BCG, for example, what we do with our candidates, we actually have a lot more latitude because we're representing people. So we can write all these great things about them and why they think they're great. Whereas if you do that about yourself, it doesn't look as good. So that's one of the benefits of having like a recruiter or someone like us help you. But at the same time, the other thing you should think about is making a connection. So one of the ways that we make connections with law firms and when we write letters on a candidate's behalf is we will typically tell the law firm why that person's interested in the firm or why the candidate's coming through us. So why is that person applying through us? And so there can be lots and lots of reasons, but typically we'll go through and we'll say, if the person is doing consumer facing litigation, for example, we may say they just as you represent a lot of consumers, they're also interested in consumer based litigation. They're aware that your firm is on these lists and they might be on, I know, a top ranked firm list at BCG or US News or Chambers or something. And we feel the firm would be a good fit because of that. We're also aware that you've had a lot of openings in the past and interviewed very similar people. So if you make a connection with people and you give a reason why you're applying to the person and doing that in a cover letter can make a massive difference. And it something like that gets their attention is huge. And any type of connection. So you can talk about all the things you've done, but if you do a mass produced letter, typically it's not going to be closely read. They're still going to like your resume. But if you're sincere and you really want to be somewhere, that's going to make a huge difference. And sometimes just being direct about your skill set and what you like doing, and if that matches what the firm says they like, that's going to be helpful as well. An example would be, I love doing large corporate bankruptcies. I've been doing it my whole career. My favorite thing is to work on behalf of helping large companies restructure. If that's your interest and you're applying for it, working and doing large bankruptcies, that's what you should put in your cover letter. And that's going to, get you a position. But anything you can do to make a connection is the most important. And then again, you should state in your letter, you can always state you'll follow up to discuss a possible meeting if you like. But in most cases, that's not going to do you a ton of good. But following up a lot of times can make a big difference. And I think that many times, one of the things that I've seen in recessions is there's always people, and again, we're not in a recession right now, but when there is a recession, there's always people that are able to rise to the top of the pile no matter what happens. And the way they typically do it is they're able they contact employers, they go beyond what they wrote. They don't just send an application. They make sure that there's some sort of connection out there. And then the last thing I put on here is just to make sure you proofread. If you're drafting a cover letter and you don't proofread it, that can really hurt you. So people make all the times will make stupid errors and so forth, the cover letters. And if you do that, that can do a ton of harm and something to be very careful about. If there's a misspelling or if you're using improper words, people can tell a lot about you by your writing style. And you certainly will not be seriously considered. This is, I guess, an example where someone forwarded something about continuance and they confused the word disk with the word disk, like a computer disk, and that looks bad. Obviously, you need to understand the importance of being careful. Spell check and grammar software, which we'll talk about more today when we start things, can make a huge difference. And then these are just some things that you shouldn't do, want to be around, and law firms and other employers want to hire people that they believe are very enthusiastic. So they want They want positive things. And every application for any job out there has people that are positive and people that are negative. And a law firm's always going to try to bring in positive people. And you always want to have a positive spin for looking for a new position. A positive spin is not would be along the lines of, and I can talk a lot about this when we start reviewing cover letters, but some people will say things like, I'm looking for new horizons or something in a cover letter. It's much better to say that I've been working on smaller matters and I want to work in a firm that's larger where I can work on more significant matters. And or it's much better to say I'm unhappy at my current firm because of management changed. That you could say that, but it's much better to say I'm, relocating to my home market because my family's there and I want to settle down and so forth. So people are always looking for reasons to hire you that are positive, and talking about advancement or different type of experience is important, but you need to be focused on growth as opposed to just looking for a job. And if you send out a resume that says you're just looking for a job, someone may hire you, but it's typically going to be a mistake compared to someone that has a concrete reason for being somewhere. And so that is very important. A firm is trying to get a sense of your enthusiasm for the job. So just think about you and your personal relationships with people, whether they're romantic relationships or they're standard kind of friends or just people that you meet from time to time. Typically, the people that you want to spend your time with are going to be people that you have a shared interest with. So if someone just shows up at your door and says, I want to be your friend, the odds are you're probably not going to be that interested in them, but you will be interested if they say, I share the same, I've had the same pain as you, or we have very similar backgrounds. I think we could help each other. I'm enthusiastic for this. I really appreciate your art or I don't know, your personality. We have a lot of friends in common. Something that makes you stand out and connect with people is really the most important thing. If you show up and you say things like, I'd like to be your friend. My friends aren't working out. I need new friends. They're just no one seems to like me, and that sort of thing. That's not a way to get friends. You have to have a benefit that someone offers you. If there's anything negative about your experience, then people or your tone or the people aren't going to want to bring you on. And then fluff is just a kind of another type of statement. So a lot of times people will put together cover letters that will describe themselves in glowing terms that say things like, I'm the best at this or the best at that, and so forth. And that also is not good. Just saying, I believe you'll find me smart, hardworking, and capable of working on a lot of things, it's probably not good. Instead, you can say things that show a history of your achievement if you want in your cover letter. And then talk about different things like your current things that you're doing that are unusual can be always good. And then specific attributes and so forth are better than just making unsubstantiated claims. And then do not use the word Iowa. You want to avoid sounding very self-absorbed. You want to be able to show the firm your strengths and how you're going to help them. And then you also want to make sure you can always keep readers engaged and not necessarily regurgitate your resume. Your cover letter, everything I've said, I hope you guys understand and girls, is the whole point is to try to make a connection and to not just reiterate all your experience and so forth. So you can many times give people a reason that you're maybe seeking a new job, which is always important if it's a positive reason, which we can talk about today when we start reviewing cover letters. But all of this stuff should hopefully be very clearly noted in your cover letter to the extent you can. And again, don't use a lot of times lawyers, and especially young lawyers and law students, think that they need to use big language and so forth. You don't need to do that. You should just say short sentences and so forth are very important. Complicated language distracts the reader. Hemingway is a good example. People used to learn to write like him. One of the reasons that he tended to write very short sentences, I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why he did that, was because he was a newspaper reporter and he was trained to write short sentences because you had to put things over the ticker type, I think. And so he was, and when they would communicate from Paris to wherever or different places he was writing. So he learned to write short words. In contrast, someone like Dickens was paid by the work when he was writing stories. So the point is, but here you want to try to, not use a lot of words. I think we'll see when we review cover letters that it's important to try to write very short sentences. And then the other thing is just that your formatting needs to be very clear. Your font choice and so forth needs to be fairly conservative, and then get a sense of what the attorneys are looking for and the firm that you're applying to, and just go from there. So these are just a few points for cover letters. I think I'm not going to spend much more time on this. I think everyone, I don't know how interesting it is hearing a presentation about cover letters, but if there's one thing you can remember about cover letters, it's just that the main purpose, I believe, is to not screw up and to make it short, and also to make a connection with the employer. Like, why are you applying? Why are you showing up here with me, and so forth? And why should I talk to you? And that's really it. So I will take a quick break, and then I'm just going to, just for 1 or 2 minutes, and I'm going to pull up the cover letters, and then we'll go from there. I want to make sure I have all your cover letters. So just give me 1 second here. I have to pull them up, and here we go. Perfect. Okay, so here's a cover letter. Here's some cover letters. Okay, let me pull. Let me see here. See here. 1 second. All right. So I am going to pull up some cover letters now. I don't need to take much of a break. I guess I'll just start going through these. Give me 1 second, and we can get started. And again, remember, send all of any cover letters you guys have to that email address. It's mjenkins@er.org, and then I will try to review them. I don't have as many cover letters as I was hoping for, but I will review the ones that I have right now. So just give me 1 second, and I'll start pulling them up. Okay, so here are the first ones. Let's see here. Okay, so this is the first cover letter here. And I think people just make up these names. So this isn't necessarily a person's name. One of the things that I recommend that everyone do, read only. Let me fix that. My goodness, give me 1 second. So one of the things I recommend that everyone do is when everyone needs to be using software, right, like Grammarly and things along those lines for your cover letters and anything you write in your resume. So it's actually imperative, because there's always a lot of smaller mistakes and so forth that people make, and you need to be catching those small mistakes. I'll try to hopefully this isn't too small, but you can see here that just some small things, like this person put in over the years or whatever, which is fine, but you probably don't even need to say that. You would probably just do that. And then you can see all these punctuation errors and so forth here. So I'm not going to talk about those right now. I'll talk about them in a second, but let's talk about what this resume is doing. I would like to take this opportunity to submit my resume for consideration for the position of a district attorney, major economic crimes bureau. I am sending you my resume not only because I'm interested in the position, but most of all, I feel that my unique assets and skills would be an asset for the district attorney's office. Okay, so let's see if we can track changes here, just so you guys can see this. Okay, I sat for the New York bar successfully and was admitted in 2010. I have since returned to Georgia, where I have obtained employment in the e-discovery document review field. As a project attorney, document review, with 10 years experience working for some of the leading law firms in the country, I have specialized knowledge and experience providing litigation support services. Okay, so the problem with this cover letter is that all this stuff here is almost talking the person out of the job. So this job is for the associate attorney, the attorney in major economic crimes bureau. I don't even know if B would be capitalized, but I'm not going to worry about that. All you need to say here really is, I would like to apply assistant district attorney for attorney opening. You don't even say I would like to apply. You just say I'm applying for the. Let me try to make this a little larger too, just for people. Give me a second here. Zoom 200. So I hate when things are slow like this. Okay. So the point here is that what you're doing is you're trying to, and I'll try to do a better job tracking changes here, but if you view, let me just see here, show markup. I'm applying for the circuit attorney opening. You don't need to say I'm sending my resume because I'm interested, and all this stuff should probably come out. None of this is helping the person that's writing this. And then you say, I sat for the New York bar successfully and was admitted in 2010. You don't need to say that. You can say, I'm a member, but that's all going to be on your resume as well. So you're highlighting things that are already on your resume. So and you've said here several times that you've already submitted your resume. So I want to go, this is actually very interesting. So I don't know that there's really any need here to put in anything more than I'm applying for this opening. What the employers are concerned about is, can you do the job? Now, I'm going to talk about this with every cover letter, and let me actually take this cover letter and I want to print it up here again because it's a good example for everyone. So let me just take it here again. Okay, so they're concerned about, and I'm just going to put it right here again for you guys. When you're applying for any job, employers are concerned about, can you do the job? And we cover this kind of every week. Do the job. Do you want the job? Can you be managed? Will you do the job long term? And then the other one is, do we like you? So these are all questions that you have to ask yourself. And this is very important because this cover letter is very similar to every sort of cover letter that I see. All markup. Okay, let me see. Okay, that's not working. Let me see here. I'm trying to show markup. Yeah, all markup. Okay. Do you want the job basically means can you do the job means, is this person going to be a good attorney? Is this person going to be a good assistant district attorney with a major economics crime bureau? And my thought would be, they haven't said anything on here. The only thing that they've said that makes them anywhere near suited for this is admitted to the New York bar, but that's probably not enough. Do you want the job? There's nothing in this letter that shows if the person wants the job. All this letter is saying is they've lived in Georgia for the past 14 years. There's nothing specific about the person's experience, nothing about the experience that makes that even a realistic possibility. So there's nothing there about that. There's nothing that shows the person can be managed because they've done nothing but contract jobs. So they've only had short-term employment. And there's nothing that shows the job they could do it long-term, only short-term employment, which is okay if they were applying for a document review employment. And there's no connection, zero connection. There's no connection. So there's nothing that we can see in this person that makes them, there's no connection. There's nothing that shows they know anyone. There's nothing that shows they're a New Yorker. There's nothing that shows that they share anything in common with anybody that would possibly be an asset for this job. So that's the problem. This cover letter is not going to get this job. If they do hire this person, it would be a miracle, but there's just no connection. What I would recommend here is doing this and then you could say, are you moving to New York, or what is the reason for you applying? Because if this person's in another state, all you would need to say is, I am a member of the New York bar. I am a member of the New York bar in the process of relocating to New York. If that's true, that's all you need to say. And then one thing if I was this person with this resume or this cover letter, I would say something along the lines of, because this person's probably not going to possibly be able to get this position as a district attorney with 10 years or 15 years of contract experience, I might just say, I am open for all potential positions you have. I'm ready to work, something along those lines. I realize my experience is not the perfect match, and would appreciate consideration. All positions. That's direct. And if someone sees this cover letter as opposed to this stuff right here, they're going to be much more enthusiastic about this particular candidate than they would be this, because at least you're making a connection. At least you're showing some of this stuff. Here, you're saying you're relocating. You're saying that you're being humble. So you're trying to make a connection. And just along those lines, those sorts of things can make a big difference. So anything that you can do to clear that up and make the cover letter much more direct like this. A shorter cover letter work much better for attorney position. And you don't even need to say, I realize my experience. However, for all positions, since you have something along those lines, that's going to be much shorter and help you much more. So that's just being direct. All this stuff here, I want to just go through and make sure everyone understands why this doesn't work, because everyone does this stuff. I'm sending you my resume for this position, not only because I'm interested, but my combination of skills will be an asset. It's just, that's not your decision. Anyway, you have experience in a field that's not related, and all this sort of thing. So this is a very good resume for a position for someone to do work related to anything related to document review and so forth. But other than that, you're going to have to make a better case. And so something along this line is actually going to work much better because it's shorter. It's going to get you in the door, and you're not competing for something that's an impossibility with your existing, because they're going to receive better applicants than that. Okay, so let's see the next one. I don't know why I'm having problems here. The next question is, enclosure you'll find my resume. For some reason, my computer is not, give me 1 second here. So I'm having a problem with my computer. Okay, let me see here. Sorry, my computer is locked up or something. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So this next one, dear Mrs. Brett, enclosure you'll find a copy, the same name of my distance for an legal administrative specialist. Okay. I don't know why my computer's having problems here. Or not because I'm interested in the position, but most of all, I feel I'm highly qualified to be an asset to the U.S. Department of Labor. As you will see, I have 6 years experience from litigation category. This looks like a very similar resume. Okay, this is the same person, it looks like. Okay. Okay, all this is a very similar resume here. So let me just copy and paste this. Let me get a new document, and then we'll, 1 second. Okay. Close, you'll find a copy of my resume. Okay, so all this stuff, when you say, close, you'll find a copy of my resume, you can see here too, this is very interesting, and I just want to go through these suggestions. You can see all the kind of the suggestions that the program's making. So all these suggestions are important because it's going to, the person didn't put of specialized, they didn't spell out the word 6. They could use the word job instead of and they used, there's punctuation missing, there's commas missing, and so you can just see the pleasure, all this kind of stuff that's in here. And I don't want to spend too much time going through this, but these are just some of the changes that the grammar software made. That's a lot in a very small space of time. And so the problem with that is what this person's doing essentially by writing all this and not proofreading things is they're demonstrating that they don't proofread things. And that's a problem. So here you could just say, I'm going to take this proofread example, because this is just the most, basic thing is to proofread this. And then I'll mark this up. And all you say here is you say, I am applying legal administrative position. Okay, you don't have to say you're highly qualified. That's for them to make. I'm applying. Okay, this is actually much better because this is the same person that was working as a contract attorney. And now they're saying they have 6 years of experience providing specialized litigation support services. I would just say I have 6 years of experience providing litigation support services. That's it. So again, 6 years of experience. And a lot of this is things that people learn when they're copywriting. And okay, people don't talk like this. Like, I want the pleasure to discuss further. That's enough right there. I look forward to hearing from you. Even this, this is okay. The person providing litigation support services, you may want to say, I'm proficient, numerous litigation support software tools, something along those lines, or something along those lines. So here, again, you ask yourself the same questions. Does this person, do they want the job? Are they likely to, all those questions? Can they do the job? Will you do you want the job? Will you do the job long term? Can you be managed? Job long term. So I would write down these 5 questions for every cover letter. And if this is the legal administrative specialist position, it requires these skills, then this shows you can do the job. Can you be managed? If there's a way to put that in there, I've worked for the same agency for 10 years or whatever, that would be good. And I'm interested. And then will you do the job long term? Do we like it? So these things, if you can get those in that cover letter, it's going to be much better. Okay, so let me go. I've got some new cover letters here. Good. And if you can send more, that would be great. But I will do this. And let me just sit here. File new. Okay. So this one is, I'm a newly licensed lawyer. I'm writing my expressed interest in the litigation counsel position at Google. Okay. Okay. That's fine. I can move this person down there. It doesn't matter to me. And then let's see. Okay. So this is interesting. I'm a newly licensed lawyer writing to express my position in litigation counsel position at Google. If you ask, can you do the job? If this a newly licensed lawyer, the answer to that question is probably going to be no. So I would just think about that. How is that possibly related to, how does that show that they can do the job? I would just say you don't want to put in, I'm newly licensed. That's probably not going to help you very much. And if you're newly licensed in August, that means that you just took the bar, you took it for a second time, which is fine, but you probably don't want to draw attention to that. So I would just say I'm writing to express my interest in Google. You would say not Google, but Google, in your litigation, in your litigation. They know they're Google. So you don't need to say that. You would take that out. My interest in Google has been established by a 1-year internship in a hospital as a public corporation whose mission is public service. Okay. Google is a for-profit company. So it's probably not having interest in that doesn't make you qualified either. So that has nothing to do with anything. So I would take that out. And okay, so now this person is a newly licensed attorney with extensive litigation experience. Okay, that's impossible. Okay, but you could say as a litigation, and I'm just doing it this way, as a litigation associate and at our law. And one of the things I would recommend too, when you're doing letters like this, is keep in mind, if you're applying to Google, they're probably going to get a lot of applicants from lots of major companies. So you may not want to be drawing attention to the fact that you practice at a small firm. You might draw that fact to people if you were doing that, but you may not want to draw the attention to that. That's up to you. But I would just say, as a litigation associate, I don't know if you're applying as a newly licensed attorney in August and you are no longer employed. I'm wondering if you're still employed there. That's be the question the employer is going to be asking. But I was involved in, and I would just say I was involved in from drafting complaint or cross complaints to trial materials. Okay, so I want to just show you one thing here too, just so you understand some of the issues with this particular letter. And I think that it's important. I'm editing it for you, but I do want to show you a few things here when this grammar stuff starts. So, this is fixed. You can see here. And then there's spacing issues. There's a newly is correct grammar. I have gained extensive litigation. You can see that. You can see my ability to pay attention to throughout the years. Okay. At my prior roles. Okay. In particular, promotion as the first ever law clerk at IBA, the International Bar Association. Anyway, you can see all these issues here. So there's a lot of them, and there's really no excuse for these errors. You can't, if you're making lots of errors, there's no excuse. And especially if just an off the shelf grammar program, keep them up. So here I'm just going through this and ready to express my interest in your litigation counsel position. As a litigation associate, I was involved in, and then I would just say drafting complaints. You don't need to put all that information in there, drafting complaints, and you don't need to say cross complaints and complaints. And then I would just say, and preparing trial materials. There's probably more than that, from drafting complaints, preparing trial materials, motions. And so it's the same thing here. You're just saying prepared and argued motions for forensic copy. Okay. I refine my time management skills. Okay. You can see here, just so everyone here there's a book. I independently managed my own caseloads and deadlines, independently managed my own caseloads. And then that means deadlines as well. Okay. And then worked at the Iranian Bar Association. Okay. That's great. So, and the Supreme Court amicus brief, that's great too, but still, this stuff the stuff being queued via Zoom, it's 2021 in person, but it's the employer's job to do all this. So I would take that out. So let's just go through and fix this here. So writing my interest in your litigation counsel position. As a litigation associate, I would just say, I have drafted motions, participated. something along those lines, independently. And that's basically the same thing as you've said down there. And then as a law clerk, no one cares that you're the first as a law clerk. My details and my research, I just say you don't have to say detail and substantive, just say my research contributed to that. So that just sounds much better. Now you're talking about my my cases, my cases as a law clerk. Yeah, as a law clerk, I would just say that as a law clerk, you can say that my research contributed to this, and that just sounds very good. And this is, and then maybe a line or two about what is it about Google that appeals to you. Some of the things that I don't necessarily like in this letter, and this is much shorter. Here you say you're managing my own cases, law clerk, on this, and then you're very short, and you don't, and I can fix that. So I fixed that language. This is much shorter. It basically says the same thing, and it doesn't waste a lot of time. Everyone loves Google, or most people do, so you don't need to talk about that. And here, the problem with all this is you're saying I'm a newly licensed lawyer, which is creating doubt. Okay. Why would someone hire newer? I'm writing. Of course you're writing. This is a writing. Everyone knows you're writing. My interest has been established. This makes no sense that to argue that it would be established when you're working for a public corporation whose interest is public service. Google is out to make money. They're being sued by countless people for taking advantage of advertisers, privacy. And there's a lot of good things about the company, but I'm saying that's just not a good argument. My interest in litigation, experience at working in in-house legal matters makes me an excellent candidate. That's their decision. So you need to talk about that. Now you're talking about a very small law firm. You're also basically implying that you're no longer working there because you're saying I was involved. And then you're talking about in language that doesn't really make a lot of sense and that stuff. And then you're talking about how you're the first law clerk, and you're talking about, I don't know what kind of organization this is, and it may help you if someone reviewing your resume is familiar with this bar association, but typically it may not. It's special interest groups and so forth don't necessarily always help you. And then all this extra language, Zoom meets 2021 in person, is just fluffy. It doesn't make any sense. So this is a much better cover letter. And again, you just say this and then you're done. You don't, and maybe you just say, I always wanted to work for Google. So many reasons, something along those lines. That makes a connection. It makes people like you. And that's it. And this is going to make a much better. You talk about the Supreme Court, or you talk about you managing your own cases, and you don't go into a lot of detail. And that's it. And so no one needs to say a lot. And this makes you look much stronger, because here you were talking about arguments that make no sense, working at very small firms, working for a special interest group that people may or may not like. So it's a country that is variously at war with the United States. So, I mean, again, most Americans that are from Iran are not dislike Iran, but it's the fact of that, but that's just a point. So you have to think about how all this is for optics, and then telling people that Zoom is 2021 in person. Google actually has their own thing that they've developed for web conferencing. So telling them to meet via Zoom is probably going to piss them off, because this may actually go to that. All they use is their own Google thing over there. So just these sorts of things weaken your cover letter, and you just need to do whatever you can to make things stronger, and everyone needs to. That's how you would fix that. Let's go to the next one. And thank you, by the way, everyone who has been sending your cover letters during this. This is helpful. And let me just see here, and I will pull up the next one for you. But this actually one looks pretty good. I actually like this one, but this looks very good. It's pretty cool, actually. The one I'm just about to pull up. So I'm just cut and paste it. Okay. I actually, just the look and feel of this cover letter, I like right off the bat. I like this person has cut and pasted something in the signature. That's cool. I like that. But they're also applying to a government organization. So they're putting this sort of stuff up here. Sometimes the people will put these things up on cover letters just because you have to when you're applying to government jobs. One thing I am noticing, let me just see here. This is in Times New Roman, and this is an Arial font. Everything really should be in the same font. I don't know why the person cut and pasted that. It says here there are some small errors. I don't think they're that serious, but everyone needs to learn the rules of 1 to 4 being spelled out. That's a big thing. And then here you can see it's worked on a number. I just say several. Shorter language is always important. And then, thank you, appreciate your consideration. Okay, so so these are just some small things I did with this cover letters to fix it. But now I'm going to go through and work on it. I like the look and feel of this. I don't like this thing that's not in Times Roman. The reason, by the way, it's important that everything be in the right font and so forth is just because when people are reviewing things, that it makes the people reviewing them, if they see a font that's just an attention to detail issue. That's just kind of how attorneys think. Okay, so let's see here. So this person says, as an attorney with over 20 years of experience in policy development, legislative drafting, anti-corruption, litigation, international law, I'm ready to apply for the attorney advisor position. Okay. So this is an attorney advisor position with the money laundering and asset recovery section, which is great. But at the same time, you don't want to, there's a couple things that this person is highlighting that may not be helpful. They're talking about the fact that they do things that may not necessarily be related, and they're talking about all their experience. So just remember, a lot of times people want younger people in jobs. You need to be careful. You always don't want to highlight how much experience you have once you get beyond that many, but that's maybe okay. You talking about policy development and so forth, if it's relevant to the job, is okay. But international law, if it's relevant, maybe okay. But I'm going to keep reading this to make a decision about that. I currently work as a contract attorney. Okay. Previously, I provided policy development related to assistance foreign officials through U.S. foreign aid and United Nations. Okay. Most recently, I also designed and taught a 16-hour, for Uzbekistan. Okay. This person looks like another spy. Maybe not. Okay. So before working internationally, I served for 4 years as a non-Parisian attorney drafting, having worked extensively with offices well regarded for the high quality skill to provide an accurate and authoritative advice with sensitive issues under time. Okay. So I like this resume. I like this person because I think that they're taking whatever this is seriously, and they're very interested in the government, and it comes through, and it will on their resume too, I hope. And it seems like they probably do want this job and probably do enjoy working in the government. So that's very good. They probably can be managed, I would think, but we'll talk a little bit about that, and probably would do the job long term. So there's a lot of good things about this resume. But let me just show you here the changes that I'll make, just because I think that it can be much better. You already say it up here. And then here you say, I currently work as a contract attorney. That's fine. I would just say, I currently work with, you don't need to say contract. You're drawing attention to the fact that you're not a permanent employee, which may impact whether or not your ability to be managed, wanting to do a job long term. Here, saying you have over 20 years of experience will come through in your resume. Counsel, I just say I assist. No, you don't want to say I assist HHS attorneys, because that makes it sound like you're not even working as an attorney, and yet you're working for other attorneys, helping them do things, and instead of the responsibility. So I would take that out. I would just say assist. I just say I work on something along those lines, work on in just multiple countries. Okay. This stuff here belongs in your resume, but the fact that you've taught all this stuff in policy development and legislative drafting and stuff is probably not, it's detracting from whether or not you can be managed, or why someone's going to ask, why is this person spending all this time doing that, and so forth. Before working internationally, I served for 4 years. I would go like this. So this basically this paragraph probably needs to just come out. I would just say something along those lines, and restated. All this is good information, but it's going to be on your resume. Prior to this position, throughout my career, of analysis, something along those lines. And I could help you. And then this is it. I appreciate your consideration. And you don't have to say, I look forward to hearing from you, because they might say no. So why would you look forward to that? Just say, appreciate your consideration, and very much appreciate your consideration. That's it. What I would like to see in this cover letter is, this is all good here, but I don't even know if you need to put this in here for this particular thing. I would just say, throughout my career, worked extensively and both the U.S. and abroad in offices were well regarded for their analysis, period, or colon. period. I'm skilled at providing accurate and authoritative advice, often about sense issues and or time circumstances. Something along those lines. That's very good. And then instead of drawing attention to the fact that you're a contract attorney, you've had all these different jobs, all you're doing is basically saying you've worked for the government. And that's what I would put in there. And if people see that, they're going to like that. And then all this stuff can come out and it can be much shorter and is really making a better point about what you do. So that's how I would handle that. Thank you, by the way, for people that are sending their resumes. I know I can see we received some. And that would be helpful. What only thing I would like, do you know people? Do you have, what kind of experience do you have? Why are you applying for this specific position? What about the job listing makes you a good fit? Something along those lines. And then that would be much better. Your final cover letter would basically look like this, something along those lines. And then that basically makes the point much better. But then you need to make some sort of connection. Do we like you? I am career government attorney, federal U.S. government attorney. So, I mean, something along those lines is much better. I think would like to be considered. Okay. So one of the things, let me just tell you guys a secret that can be very helpful sometimes for this sort of thing. So I'm assuming that you may know, because this person's probably already in DC, I'm guessing, you can say something along the lines of sometimes. Now, you may speak to someone. This is a good trick I'm going to show everyone. But sometimes you can you can speak to someone that works in this division. You can speak to someone about them. You can do something about this. You could say, "I've spoken with." So sometimes it's if you can call someone in the department and to name and appreciated all their insight or something, and something along the appreciated. And so what happens when you do things like that? When you can put things like this into this sort of thing, it can be helpful. And so here you can, if you have someone's name, a lot of times you may speak to someone in the department and just say, I had some questions about the position. Would it be okay to apply? You can sometimes call before applying. And if you say something nice about the person you spoke to, that person's going to feel good and then when they forward the resume, they're going to be a little bit concerned about your background, about making sure you get seen and so forth. So sometimes this is a good tactic. If people in the company, that can be good. But a lot of times flattering someone, if you could possibly find someone there, make a phone call, or because you already work in DC, finding someone and you could put a few lines about this and be very nice and respectful to the person. That sort of stuff can help you a great deal. So that's one way to do that. It can be helpful. Okay, so let me see. I appreciate that was sent over. Let me see if I can do some other ones here. Give me 1 second. Same one. Got another one here. I keep giving the same one. Okay, here's another one. Okay, so this is another one. And again, if anybody has any cover letters they would like me to review, just send them because I think I'm almost running out here. Okay, so foreclosure attorney concern. I'm writing to introduce myself. Okay, this is actually cut and paste from a, what do you call it, PDF. So that's why the actual real document looks much different than this. But I will go through this particular one right here just to show you what it looks like. Okay, real briefly, this particular cover letter, and we'll talk a little bit about this here for your inspection. And I appreciate this person sending this over. They sent it as a PDF, so I don't have any ability to edit it, but I will look at it like this way, you expressed, and I'll just show you the way the real one looks. So you guys can take a look here real quickly. So this is the way that the real cover letter looks. Let me just fix this. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this person is saying, I'm writing to introduce myself and to express my interest in the foreclosure training opportunity currently available with this particular firm. My legal experience includes, but is not limited to. Okay. But this particular cover letter, what I would recommend is that there's really no reason if someone can get all this information from your resume. So there's really no reason to have all of this stuff on here. So my experience includes, but is not limited to. It's actually much better just to not have it there. And the reason is because if the foreclosure attorney may not need to have covenants not to compete, third-party administration, and so forth. There's a lot of other issues too, like third-party administration. There should be a dash after that. You should never send something to whom it may concern. You should always try to have a contact there. And then You never want to say things like I'm writing to introduce myself, and just say I'm applying for this position. And then obviously you're writing to consumer law attorneys, so you don't need to say you're applying to them. I'm just saying I'm writing to apply for this position you have. You don't need to say you're familiar with Word, with how to use Word. Everyone, and that's something that people put in there a lot. You don't need to put that in there. There's nothing about that most people in Salesforce, by the way, I think is one word. And so you need to make sure that you just no one ever needs to have any of this. So I would, with this particular cover letter, I would take all this stuff out right here. And then you don't need to tell people you're enclosing a copy of my resume. If this language is much, it doesn't need to be as long as it is. All you need to say here is, you don't even need to say that. You need to say, I hope to discuss this opportunity with you. And that's it. And you don't need to say for your inspection. It just sounds a little over the top. And then cordially is, anyway. So that's how I would recommend with this particular email, is just really doing whatever you can to shorten it up. Don't talk about experience that has nothing to do with the job. Don't talk about your ability to work with these programs that have nothing to do with the job, or they may, but it's just a standard requirement. This is like saying I speak English. So saying I'm proficient with Word is like saying I speak English. That's great. You can do things, but other than that, that's how I would handle that. So let me just see here. Okay, so I honestly think, it looks like, let me just make sure. I think I've got all of the cover letters here that people have sent. If I don't have any more, I guess I'll end this call. If you guys don't have any more, let me see if there's any questions. The resume review video from last week, I don't know if it's been uploaded yet, but I will check on that. Does anyone have any other questions I can answer? If you guys have questions, I'm happy to do. To everyone, as Mark Edo said, the interview did lead to the interview, which is great. I said it was a good cover letter, but if you can make some changes. Let me see. Someone else said, some other people. So the webinar replays are always on BCG. Let me just check real quick for you guys. If you just sent some cover letters, and make sure I review them. If you did resend them, so let me just check here. And if you do have them, I will send them. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm just checking for cover letters.
Let me double check. There wasn't that many.
All right. So I do have a couple more I had to go over, which is great. So let me open these and send these over to you guys. Okay. Entry-level attorney. Okay. Let's open this. This is actually, it looks like someone did some work on the interim. So this is a short one. So one of the things to remember about, and let's just go post on your firm's website. Okay. That's fine. I subscribe to, and again, I'm just working. This is unsplit the infinity, and all these different changes here that you can be rest assured. You can see quite a few errors that everything picked up. So just making sure you guys are running things through grammar programs is very helpful. Okay, this letter is in response to the advertisement posted on your firm's website for the position of entry-level attorney. So let's talk about that. All you need to, so that's going to come out. So you're just basically going to say, I am applying for your entry, I think it's just entry level. I'm a foreign trained attorney. No, you don't want to say that. Okay. I'm a foreign trained attorney. I'm goal motivated. I would hope that everyone that applies for any job is goal motivated. Okay. And then, okay. So most of the stuff in this particular letter can come out. So here, and this up here, is probably a little bit overkill too. So I'm going to take that out. So let's talk about this. So the first thing is every cover letter needs to have, it shouldn't be hiring manager. Different firms have different titles of who they hire, or what the title you send it to is. So if you have a contact, you should always try to contact the firm and find out who it is. Now, sometimes they'll say the hiring manager, which is perfectly fine, but that I would try to have a person's name. Remember, it's funny, Warren Buffett on his desk, one of the things he has is he has a copy of his certificate from a class he took 40 years ago or something called the Dale Carnegie class. And what that class basically teaches you is that one of the best things you can do is to use people's names and everything. And so people love to hear the sounds of their name. So you can see here when we talked about this resume, I talked about using the person's name, and this resume person actually got an interview, which is good. But if you can use a name and so forth, it's always very helpful. So Many times there's a name you can call up and ask, who can I send this to, or should I just apply? And they'll probably say just apply, but you can always use a name and that's it. I'm applying for the entry level attorney position, which is fine. I don't know what kind of firm this is, but you don't need to put this up here at the top. You can do it like that. And then you have the person's name, actual name. Sorry. And I'm applying for entry level attorney. So saying I'm a foreign trained attorney is going to spook people. And there's nothing wrong with being a foreign trained attorney. But the problem is if you say you're a foreign driven attorney, then that's going to spook them because the firm's going to believe that you may, who knows? They don't know if you speak English. They don't know how good your English is. They don't know what your overall experience is. So that is a problem. And so you need to be very careful about that. There's nothing, you don't want to necessarily draw attention to that. If you're applying for a job that requires language skills, then that's fine, but you need to be very careful. So saying I'm a foreign trained attorney is probably not going to help you that much. Saying I'm goal driven and motivated is probably not going to help you, or eager to learn more and constantly develop myself at every given opportunity. Those are good qualifications, but that actually should come through in your resume. And then saying you passed the bar exam, anybody applying for this job is hopefully passed the bar exam. And then the firm does not care that you are going to get an avenue to provide effective legal services and firsthand know what it takes to be a successful attorney in New York City. That none of that stuff is important to them. So you have to do something to put a little bit about that. That should be on your resume. And then aiming for excellence, and you can rest assured. None of this says anything about what you can do for the person. It's almost better just to have this and then more. But if you can do the job, you could talk about your experience. You could say, I'm an experienced litigator. My previous positions, I don't know what it is. I have relocated with my spouse to New York, or I've relocated us to New York, and that sort of thing. So something that shows you can work there long term, be managed, and all that sort of stuff is going to help you. And you just have to have a much shorter, much more direct cover letter, and that will help. Whoa, sorry about that. I apologize. It looks like you guys couldn't hear me. I apologize. But what I was saying is you just need to have this needs to have a much shorter, the cover letter needs to be much shorter. And then the other thing is that in terms of these edits, I took a lot of stuff away here from that was talking about the fact that this person is foreign trained. You don't want to draw attention to that necessarily. And then a lot of the words on here where they say I'm constantly striving to develop, I improve myself at every given opportunity and so forth. And none of this stuff really, these are all kind of things that talk about the way that everyone is. And saying you're admitted to the bar and so forth isn't necessarily going to help you either. And then aiming for excellence and rest assured and so forth. So all this stuff should come out. The thing that this thing needs to do, that this cover letter needs to do that it's not doing. And then I also, again, I apologize for being muted a second ago, but the other thing that this cover letter needs to do is it needs to talk to a specific person. So it needs to do a specific person. You always want to have person in these cover letters if you can. There's a saying, and I talked about this probably while I was muted, but Warren Buffett talks about how the most valuable class he ever took was a Dale Carnegie class. And there's a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is based on, and let me just see here. Someone asked where you can email the cover letter. You can email it to, it should be in the chat, but you can email it to mjenkins, JNKINS@er.org. But the people want to hear their name. So anytime you have a name in a cover letter and so forth, it's always good to call the firm and say something along those lines. I spoke with you this afternoon. Appreciate you taking the time, taking and forwarding my resume, or you may remember speaking with me this afternoon, something along those lines. So just some sort of personal connection and then doing it that way. So those are the main things I'd recommend. You don't want to draw attention to the fact that you're a foreign trained attorney. That just spooks people because it makes them think that you may not stick around or that you may need to have sponsorship and so forth. You have to watch all this punctuation, like attorney is not capitalized and so forth. So those are the main changes that I would make to this particular letter. There's quite a few that I would make, but those are the main ones. Let me see here. Okay, let me give you a new one. So we do have some more letters that I'm excited about. So let me just see here. Okay. So this is another one. If you could send Word documents, it's always easier, but this is fine too. Okay, I'm going to just review this one on the screen like this. Okay, the first thing is this person has done very nice formatting and so forth of their resume. But at the same time, you don't necessarily need to have a logo for your name. And I like it. I think it's cool. But at the same time, you want to be very careful about that. Maybe the blue is okay, but just remember the law firms are conservative organizations and so forth. And you want to be careful with that. You don't call people esteemed hiring partner. That's something that people do in other countries. They will laugh at that. And that just one of the problems with cover letters and especially if you're not from the US, is you really should have people in the US review things to see how people in the US talk. So people do not say things like esteemed hiring partner. They typically will say, just put the person's name. And so you want to be careful with that. And then all this formatting stuff doesn't matter. Okay. My name. Okay. You don't need to tell people you're at a tier 1 intellectual property firm and all this stuff you're saying here, and you say your name at the top. So you don't need to restate it there. And you don't need to say great enthusiasm. And you don't say that I submit. You say, I'm applying for the IP associate role. That's it. People don't care that you speak 3 languages. That'll be on your resume. And these are all things that people already know when you're applying for a job. So you can say you're trilingual on your resume, and that's enough. You can say your experience on your resume, and then you don't have to tell people that you graduated in a burgeoning global pandemic. People know all this. And so it's not that important to put all that stuff on. Okay. You don't want to talk about the fact that you bought 3 houses or whatever, which is great. But yeah, but you want to say that I relocated with my wife to Florida and to be near her parents. That's all you need to say. You can put all these courses you've taken on your thing. And then talking about unprecedented times and so forth. And everybody's going through the same thing. So there's nothing to really hurt you. And then all this stuff here, you don't need to say you have a doctor of jurisprudence. People say things like doctor of jurisprudence. Typically, that's not how attorneys talk. They don't say I have a doctor of jurisprudence, and they don't typically put that stuff there. You don't need to have all these references. The question, of course, they're going to have if they see this and this person's your reference is, why wasn't he hired at Taft? And it may just be because you're in another location. These references, if people want references, they can ask for them. So there's really no reason to list them, but you certainly could if you want. These are good references, but you have to be careful. So this particular resume needs to be, in my opinion, much shorter. Let me go through and I like a lot of things, by the way, that this particular cover letter is doing, because to some extent, like you read this cover letter, and what's nice about this particular cover letter, even though I'm saying a lot of bad things about it, and I don't think this is going to work. Actually, it is working. Look at that. What's nice about this cover letter, which is funny, but this particular person, just by reading it, you can tell their personality, that they're signing things. And look at that signature. It's a very big personality. They're proud of their accomplishments. They're talking about these unprecedented times and everything. It's fun. So I actually like this person just reading it. I don't like this format in here, but I like this person. I think they would probably be a good employee. And so I like the person, and that's coming through. And that's actually a hard thing to do in a cover letter. And then they're excited about their references and so forth. And then all this kind of drama and family and stuff. So it's a likable person, which is actually very hard to do in a cover letter. It's hard to make a connection. And this person's done that. So there's a lot of very good things about this letter. So if you guys look at it, and girls, you can see here, this is probably actually a very nice person and very enthusiastic person, probably would be a great worker. But at the same time, this cover letter needs a lot of work. And calling someone an esteemed hiring partner obviously is fairly funny. And the other thing too is, look at this. You can see here, I'm proofreading this, and this particular person, it looks like they've done a decent job with proofing it. So there's not a lot of errors and things that are coming through. I've just proofed it, and this person is obviously taking things very seriously. Okay, so let's just fix this cover letter, and then I'll move on. But this is actually a likable person, and probably will be very good at what they do, and able to look at this. They're very enthusiastic. I would just say and so this would come out I'm just going to cross things that will come out. So I'm just fixing all this. This sentence is too long. So all this person needs to say here is, and they don't need to say why they're drawn to the firm. All you need to say is, I'm applying for a patent attorney job. That's it. I'm admitted to the patent bar. Well, you don't even need to say that's on your resume. So just think about what's not in your resume. You can say, I have 5 years experience, 5 years experience, design engineer. And you don't need to tell people our company. That's it. So you don't need to tell people other lawyers that a firm is a tier 1 firm and so forth. So you just need to be careful about that. And then I would go in here and say, you don't ever need to be committed. You don't need to say you're familiar with billing 2,000 hours. You don't need to say when you graduated. You don't need to say any of this. You could say, my wife and I relocated to Florida to be near her parents /. And that's enough. You don't need to say you invested in rebuilding things. No one cares about that. That actually makes it look like you might not be able to be managed. So that's all. Your parents last year. That you might want to put in some of these things here. That's it. So this is all you need. So something very similar is this person, by the way, even though they haven't worked and you're maybe concerned about that, whoever this person is, I don't know if this is the real name, you will get a job because of your background. You probably shouldn't be trying to be a patent attorney in Florida because it's not really a big place for that type of work, but you will get a job. And your ability everyone can see you're admitted to the patent bar and so forth on your resume. Enjoy it. This is all you need to put. The classes and so forth you took, you could also put, you could list here if you want, just to show that you've been, since that time, I've been taking care of their parents before settling down and starting a family, something along those lines. But other than that, this is a great cover letter. So I would make those changes. Okay, give me 1 second. And I think it's cool when you review cover letters and you can see how you can see a lot of the way people are in their cover letters. So let me just send this one here. I got one more. Okay, dear hiring recruiter. So again, it's one of the things I would recommend to everyone is just, and this is looks like maybe the last one I have. Let's see here. Okay. And then I'll try to answer any questions you guys have. This particular, you can see here, this title, the person may not be a recruiter. They may not be a hiring. You don't know what their title is. So you always want to try whenever possible, get a person. Allows connection. So that's why it's important. Okay. So extremely interested in the title attorney position. So let's go through and fix this. Now look at this. They took out that whole thing. That's very interesting, the proofreading software. Let's see how they did that. Okay. I'm highly interested. I'm just, looking at all these changes that the system has made and determining. Okay. All right. So let's see. I'm highly interested in the attorney title position. I'm skilled in interpreting documents, affecting real property or records. Okay. This is actually pretty good. So it's entitled attorney position. And so this cover letter is very relevant to what they're searching for and what the position is, it sounds like. So I actually do not have a lot of particular criticisms of this cover letter so far. I think this is probably exactly what this employer needs. I have a dynamic, high energy title professional. Okay. I don't think of title professionals as dynamic and high energy. I would just say I don't know if dynamic, but you can say high energy. Okay. I like this. I think this is just this is very direct. It's a good cover letter. So I don't have a lot of natural ability. This is great. You could say I am an effective. But the reason this is good is this shows the person can do the job. So you can see here, they're showing in this information here that they can do the job. They're showing that they want the job. Please consider me for an interview. They're being very direct. They're showing that they have 15 years of experience. So that makes that they'll probably do the job long-term and can be managed. And then the only other question here would be whether or not the person can be managed or whether or not they're liked. I like them. I think this is great. And as long as they're writing a person, I think that this is a very good resume for this particular job. Okay, that looks like all the resumes I have, unless anybody sent any questions. Let me just take a look here at any questions you guys have. See here if anybody has them. The resume video, I think a couple people have asked if that's been uploaded yet. I don't think it has been, and I apologize. So the person that does that is off this week, and someone else it needs to be reviewed And then one person asked, it seems like I'm making the cover letter short and to the point. Are there prospective employees making cover letters too long was one of the questions. And one thing I would say is that a lot of people do make their cover letters too long. This cover letter right here is very direct. The problem is as a someone that's convincing people of something. So attorneys' jobs, whether or not you're writing a contract or whether or not you're litigating or what, regardless of what you're doing, is to get people's attention and convince them of your point of view. And so many times you can make the same point that you're trying to make in much shorter language, and that makes a much better impression than writing long things. So most language can be much shorter than it is, and if you're able to do that, it's much better doing that than making things long. So I'm not trying to make things long, but again, if you put in too much material, that also gives you a lot more chances to make mistakes. Just a quick example, like no one needs to know that this person has a doctor of jurisprudence. And who says doctor of jurisprudence? It's not how people talk. So people will think, and who says esteemed hiring partner? So you have to be careful. Like the more language you use, like the more you're communicating about your lack of many times of understanding what's going on. If you're applying for a job as a consumer foreclosure attorney, there's no reason you have to say you've been doing practice areas that have nothing to do with that. So you should be, or you're talking about programs that have nothing to do with that. This resume or cover letter, as we talked about, it was a very good cover letter, but at the same time, there was room to shorten it up. And this cover letter too was going into a lot of details about things that don't make any sense, that aren't necessary. So something everyone learns in law school and understands is that many times if you're making an argument, whether or not it's in a brief or in a contract or whatever, you don't want to make arguments that have nothing to do with the subject matter. Here, this person is saying they're a foreign trained attorney. They're saying things that every attorney should be. They're just going into a lot of details about things that aren't necessarily related. Someone said they sent their cover letter an hour ago, and I do not have it. Let me just see if you can resend it. I can try to review it, but I don't. I have all the cover letters located. So what I will do with today's webinar, it looks like these are all the questions, is this will be uploaded and then you can see all the corrections. But what I would recommend when everyone is reviewing their cover letters and doing your cover letters is just try to be as direct as you possibly can, and do whatever you possibly can to make a connection with your audience and not to distract them and get them thinking about other terms. So this is a perfect example. Like this person is applying for a position at Google, but then they're talking about newly licensed. Then they're talking about I have a connection to Google, because none of these arguments make sense. So this is not the kind of person you want to be your attorney if they're arguing about things and then they draw attention to a small firm and all this stuff. So you always want to draw out your strongest points and make things very direct. So I will do a cover letter review next quarter as well. So every quarter we do a review of cover letters and then also resumes. So if you guys have any more questions about cover letters, I can cover them then with your new cover letters. And someone said they missed one of the patent agent cover letters. Could I show them again at the end of the webinar? Sure. Let me see if I can find that cover letter. So this is not a patent agent. This is actually a patent attorney right here. So this is a patent attorney. And the only thing I talked about with this is I said, I really like this person. I like their signature. I like their logo and all this stuff. It's fine. But at the same time, this cover letter needs to be shortened pretty dramatically just because there's just too much going on here. And the big kind of overall thing I just wanted to say to everyone here is what everyone is doing in their cover letters is they're providing information that talks you out of people interviewing you and you giving you jobs. So you're talking yourself out of getting a job when you make typos, when you have extra language, when you draw attention to things that may not be benefits, that you look as benefits, when you don't make a connection, when you don't seem enthusiastic about the job, when you put on, too much information and so forth. So this particular person, by talking about things that have nothing to do with the job, is talking themselves out of the job. This person, again, same thing, talking himself out of job. And so you just need to be careful with all that. And a lot of this is just learning, but the big things are just ask these questions. So ask if your resume says this, Ask if it looks like if you were reviewing your cover letter, would it say that? Ask if you are able to make a connection. You show you can do the job. I just want to give a couple more notes here because I think these are good questions. They're trying to help everyone. But you show everything on your resume, cover letter, looks like you can. Remove stuff that doesn't detract from this message. So that means you want to show skills related to this issue. You show you want the job when you call and get contact information, have some sort of connection, subject matter, and can you be managed when you do not talk about yourself? Someone just sent another cover letter, so I got that. About yourself too much, and talk about what you can do for others. There's where you do the job long term, commitment to subject matter, then do we like you, some sort of personality. So let me just show you a couple things. So can you do the job? This person right here is boom, I can do the job. This is what they come out of the right away saying. Look at all this stuff I've done. I can definitely do the job. I've been doing it for 15 years. I want it. Please consider me. Boom. Can you be managed? I've been doing it for 15 years. Hell yeah, the person can be managed properly. Will you do the job long term? Hell yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years. Do we like you? People, I'm known for an ability to assess issues. I'm a strategist, great negotiator. I'm perfect. This person's doing all this stuff. So that's why this is a good cover letter. In contrast, this cover letter, esteemed hiring partner and all sorts of stuff, this person's talking about all these things that have nothing to do in the original cover letter, if you guys remember, that have nothing to do with a real job, that may detract people. Same thing here. This person is talking about things that may have nothing to do with the job. They're also, a lot of times they're showing, I don't know, the entry level attorney is capitalized like that, but you have to do your writing skills. This person is not focused on what they're doing. They're talking about all these programs, like the ability to use Word. None of this really says the person can do the job. And this person is a career U.S. government attorney. So they probably want this job. They probably can do the job. They're likable if you're a government attorney because they've committed to the same subject matter, all those sorts of things. And then this person, there's nothing about this that shows this person can do the job in that cover letter, but here there is. This is all they need to say. But if you make a short argument like here, like I've managed my own cases. When I was a clerk, my research was using the Supreme Court brief. I've always wanted to work for Google for tons of reasons. I'd love to talk to you. That's all you need to say. Here it's saying, I'm a newly licensed attorney. I'm writing to express my interest. So these sorts of things detract from your overall case. So this is the way to think about it. And I don't like to talk so much about it, but you need to make sure that you think about these things and the way they work. Okay, let me see if I have another cover letter. I think this is a new one. Let me just see if someone resended a cover letter. Okay, this is a good one. So this is fun. Okay, dear Mrs. Smith. Okay, so just remember, I'm going to go through and proofread this again just to show you guys all this stuff, the way that, all this stuff will be fixed. But you can see, although I've had invaluable experience in my current firm, I admire your firm. Okay, so I'm not going to go, actually, I will go through and do this. So all this stuff, guys, attorneys are paid to write directly to make sure that mistakes aren't made and all that sort of thing. So it's always important to go through and you can see and to be, it really as direct as you possibly can. Let's see what this person's doing. I'm a 2016 graduate of University of Texas, which is a great law school, associate and a litigation associate, although I've had invaluable experience. Okay. So these sorts of things, like I'm not aware, law firms, by the way, are businesses. And if you say things like, I admit you great client service, that's fine. They're essentially supporting the growth of attorneys and so forth. You have to, we'll talk more about that. In my time as a litigator, I have continued against my legal research and writing skills. Okay. To your business. Okay, that's great. Number and spouse. I'm more involved in litigation. Okay. So one for Washington construction law. Okay. Construction law. Okay. So so just remember these questions. So the first one is, can you do the job? I am a litigation associate. I'm a business litigation associate in Dallas. Okay. You don't say I'm a doctor in privilege. You don't need to say that. So you just say I'm a business association at Dallas writing. I would like to apply exposition or whatever. Now, you don't always need to have an opening. Sometimes you can say, I like your firm and I would like to be considered for a litigation position. And then I'm business litigation associate. In my time, I've continued to enhance my legal research. Okay. None of this stuff is really necessary. I have been involved and okay. And if you have developed concise and clear writing, you just say it here. Flyers, fun to watch. Okay. So I would say, is this so you're saying here you're a business litigation associate, but here it's a construction litigation associate. And I don't know what this best lawyer thing is here, but recognize my work. I would just put the fact that you were selected on this on your resume. That's all you need. All this goes in your resume. Okay. Talking about ethical standards and so forth, that's good. But the job of attorneys many times is to bend the rules. So if you come across as like a goody good shoes, then that may hurt you. I also have a passion. Okay, talking about pro bono work is also not always a good idea because in the community service and so forth. So even though that's a good thing you're doing that, law firms need people that are ready to work hard and bill lots of hours. So that's just something to think about. So you may want to say, I've billed this many. You're almost better off saying I've been involved in I'm this everything you said there is more like I'm developing as an attorney, developing as an attorney, involved in the community, making contacts, community, and dominated related publications of flowers. So the reason that's important is just because if you say something along those lines instead, then you're not drawing attention to construction law is if you're not applying to a construction law job, you're involved in leadership positions, representing in the community, have been nominated by our peers for best library publications, and have consistently exceeded the nominated and selected. Something along those lines is going to be much more helpful for you. And the only reason is it's just because that you're basically saying everything you were saying there. And then you may want to say, if you're saying why you're applying, that's fine, but that's fine. And then you don't need to say, I've included all this stuff. You just say, and so this is just much more powerful. And if you say why you're applying to the specific firm, it may be because they concentrate in construction law, maybe because of some reason that's going to make everything much more powerful and better. Okay. Wow. These things just keep coming. Okay. So we got a lot of people have submitted new cover letters over the past few minutes. So I will go over those. But just give me 1 second because I've been going over these for several hours or a couple hours. So I'm just going to take a quick break and grab a soda. And then I'll come back and review some of the ones that are pending right now. Thanks. Just like 2 minutes. Okay. So let's take a look at this one. Okay. So again, you don't say greetings. That's not how people talk. That's too informal. You have to be informal. And then you always remember want to use people's name. So try to use people's name here. So let's go through that. And you don't have to be respectful about it. Just say I'm applying for the name of the position you're applying for. So again, I don't want to keep doing this, guys, and girls, but here you can see all of these errors that Grammarly and other things will pick up. And you want to make sure you can see here, there's a ton of errors here. Every time you make an error, you're potentially disqualifying yourself from a job. And the thing to remember, one of the things that's important to understand is when you go to a firm like the best law firms, you don't see these errors. Like the people that are there will typically be very careful over time about making sure that they're not making these sorts of errors. So you just want to be as careful as you can. So let's go through here. So I respectfully submit my resume, applying for this position because of my aptitude. Okay. I hope to minimize legal, regulatory, reputational risk or advising on what best practices under state law. Okay. So this isn't a horrible cover letter, but I would just say I'm applying for, okay. And I don't know why this person's applying, but that's fine. This may be what the job requirements are, but you're more, instead of telling people something, you're better off many times showing them. You can say, so all this stuff here could come out. And then I work for, sorry, I'm Okay, so this person's talking about pretty much the same thing, that they do all these different things, and then talking about what their existing, the current experience is. And this is actually probably a very good attorney that will get a position. I don't think there's too much to say about it, but the big thing that I would recommend in this particular resume is this needs, first of all, it needs to be proofread, but cover letter. But the next thing is it's very difficult to read because it's just, there's so much going on, and most people do not care about all this detail and so forth. Now, if this was a voter integrity job you were trying to get, then this would all be very important. But if it's not a voter integrity job, which I guess it's not, then this probably should come out. And then you would say something along the lines of, and this person's applying for a transactional job. I would just say, you don't need to say, I am in my current job, current role. Okay. You're applying for a transactional job. Okay. You don't need to say any of this. It just needs to be, there's a lot going on in this particular cover letter. And I can tell the way this person's mind works. And it's actually, this is a very smart person that wrote this, but at the same time, understand. Okay. And then just a little bit more direct stuff. So this particular, I don't want the concision and due diligence. Okay. This particular resume or cover letter is very difficult to read because a lot of the way this person's mind works is almost like an accountant. I don't even know account's the right word, but there's a lot of detail, and this person is very detail oriented, and it's a very smart person in terms of the way they're writing, which is their mind's working. But at the same time, the problem with all this is it's very difficult to read, and it needs to be geared towards the type of position you're applying for. So if you're actually applying for the transactional agreements and compliance, then you need to, then the cover letter needs to be geared towards that. And then the resume also. So I would recommend shortening this up, and then a lot of this. Now this, if you're applying for a voting rights job, this would be a very good resume. If you were applying for a lobby related job, this would be a good resume. And if you were applying for a transactional job or data privacy, I don't even know what this is about, then this would be good. But you're saying too many different things here. And because of that, it's almost like a municipal law resume. There's just too much going on, and it's very difficult for people to get through. And most people will have, and again, I do this for a living. I've been doing it for a quarter century, and I don't understand what you do. And I review resumes for a living. I understand what you do generally, but it would be very hard for me to try to put you into some sort of box. So that's the problem. Anytime you're applying for a job, the people need to be able to see your resume and immediately your cover letter and immediately understand what it is you're doing, and try to make sense of it. And so that's how I'd recommend you approach that. And again, I'm happy to review this particular cover letter at the next session as well. Okay, so here's another cover letter, Jane Doe. It's in here, which actually looks like it might be pretty good. But I do appreciate this particular resume I just reviewed. I think it's a good one in a lot of respects. Okay, task you will find my resume. Again, remember to adjust things to a person. Actually, I'm having fun with this now. I'm applying for your social security. Okay, so again, just take a look at all these proofreading things, like these things here. And I just want to keep reiterating to everybody how important this stuff is, because if you don't proofread if there's problems with all this, then the person reading it, if they see this, is going to have the thought that you don't know how to proofread things and so forth. And keep in mind that as an attorney, like, you're going to rise or fall and be respected and so forth based on your ability. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it either, but the best attorneys and the largest firms that go the farthest typically are very good writers and are able to shorten things and so forth quite well. Okay. So all you need to say here is I'm applying for a Social Security attorney position. And then here you say, it would help if you had someone, you don't need to say that. You can tell people that. I would say, I have customer service and work. Okay. Okay. Normally I wouldn't suggest leaving you this in here, but I like this. I think that everyone has different ways of approaching things. And I actually feel okay about this particular cover letter the way it is. Social Security attorney position, it's not necessarily it does require this particular type of job. It does require fairly good people skills and so forth. So that's what's very positive about this. And it's actually not a bad cover letter. it would help if you had some kind of a team player or something like that. It would be good if this particular cover letter had some sort of connection to the role. And so I don't know much about this person, but I actually like this because if the employer for this particular job believes that customer service is very important, then I believe that this is actually a very good cover letter. And that's about that. So let me just appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. Something along those lines. I like this cover letter. Okay, so let me see what else I got here. Whoa, I got a lot more. Let me just see. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking and pulling these new cover letters here. I think I have most of them, but just give me 1 second. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm pulling up another one. Okay, I think I have done all of the cover letters. That's great. I think we're done. Let me just make sure I have everything. Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, so that's it. So I appreciate everyone sending their cover letters today and the opportunity to advise you. And we will do the same cover letter webinar again next quarter. So we do it for things. Someone did make a point. A lot of the errors are just stylistic things and often it's not appropriate. That's true. But one of the things that I would recommend with Grammarly is there are a lot of stylistic errors, but at the same time, a lot of the things that they catch are also writing errors. I particularly personally don't use Grammarly. I just happen to have it on this computer. I also like to use a thing called Pro Writing Aid. But typically spacing issues, making sure your sentences aren't too long and so forth is very helpful. I also like the online version of Grammarly much better. So you can also use that where you can upload things. It's just important to make sure that your stuff is proofread. And again, there's things like spelling, numbers, and so forth that that aren't written out that can catch. But I certainly appreciate everyone being on this call today, and I look forward to our webinar next week. And again, I do these every quarter. So we'll do in the next, quarter, we'll do the same one. And I'm happy to review your cover letters again then. And let me see if there's any more questions. No, I think that's about it. So thank you, everyone. And I will talk to everyone next week. Thanks.